Hi, so which company, multimedia international company, filmed and was responsible for all the media coverage at the French Friday the 13th attacks? Lagardère. Which company is partnered with the Stade de France under its subsidiary Sport 5, making them the managing and marketing of all events and media at the football ground? Lagardère. Which company bought the Bataclan just before the events on September the 11th? Lagardère. Which company has its biggest shareholder as the Emir of Qatar, who also bought the area of St. Denis in 2012 for $65 million? Lagardère. Cozy and Lagardère are like brothers, apparently. Which company bought the Blue Entertainment Limited media company in 2010, just prior to the Boston bombing, so therefore had media coverage of the Boston bomb? Lagardère. Bands in Town, which is a concert discovery platform, who have Eagles of Death Metal on their books, has as their shareholder Lagardère. Which company owns the TV rights American and French Tennis Open? Lagardère. And that's the reason why we see this tennis ball in this picture besides Alice. We can also see in the picture a jet. This is significant of the fact that Lagardère owned EADS, which is a European Aerospace and Defence, and were involved in the Airbus. There's also names of oil companies on the side of the jet. And this is where the Rothschilds connection comes into play. The cover of this magazine was from The Economist in the first month of January 2015. The company who owned The Economist is partly shared with the Rothschilds. So they would be in the perfect position to be explaining what is about to occur. And we have to remember that these secret societies convey their ideas to each other via symbols and colours, and this has become a universal language for them to disclose intentions to the wise, not to declare or conceal, but to signify. This film is about a jihadi cell in Paris in a plot to disrupt Paris. It was due for release before Charlie Hebdo. It was cancelled and was supposed to be released on the 11th of November, 2 days before the attack. The famous Baron Edmund de Rothschild has been honorary president of Hachette, which is owned by Lagardère since 1989. Lagardère is a major donor to the Israeli Defense Force, which is led by Daniel Rothschild. Genie Energy, which is an American-based company, has Jacob Rothschild and Rupert Murdoch sharing interests. Basically, they've been given rights to mine via Israel in Syria, in the Golan Heights. This company has on its advisory board Dick Cheney, Rupert Murdoch, James Woolley of the CIA, Larry Summers, former head of the US Treasury, and Bill Richardson, ex-ambassador to United Nations and Energy Secretary. So now we've got a clear link to oil exploration and Syria and this company and the people involved with it. I'll leave a link to this study. It's a study for a global oil service company which was backed by the French government and linked to the Tory government in the UK, where they published a report saying there was significant hydrocarbon potential in Syria's resources. They named the 3 basins where they'd identified numerous onshore oil and gas shows via satellite. And as we can see, Obama signed the HR 4310 amendment in 2013, which legalises the use of media production to enhance US interests worldwide. So therefore a drill movie for propaganda would be legal. And it's obviously clear by these photographs that they were wearing trainers and jeans. It's already been stated that there was a drill on that day. Patrick Pelloux, who is a journalist for Charlie Hebdo, is also linked to Lagardère, as he was given an award for best journalism in the early part of 2015 in front of the President of France and Arnaud Lagardère. Lagardère is a huge multimedia group. In fact, it's France's largest media company. It spans 40 countries worldwide with over 30,000 employees. Lagardère employs actors, TV personnel, radio station personnel, musicians, journalists. They've got 17 TV stations and 23 radio stations. And in 1959, the French government bought part of the Broadcasting Corporation. This is administrated by Lagardère. They're also involved with sportsmen and women, including African, German and French football. They're leaders in sports marketing and sponsorship. The sport's involved in 70 football clubs and FIFA. So this leads me on to the next part, which is Lagardère's link to governments. As of 2015, the new ambassador to France is Jane Hartley. The new ambassador to France, her husband is Rolf Schlostein, that's how you say it, who owns Evercore and Blackstone. Evercore was involved in the big pharma industry, acquiring billions during the fake swine flu non-existent pandemic. Blackstone also invested in pharmaceuticals, made a fortune out of foreign drug companies. They also bought the mortgage for Building 7 at 9/11, which mysteriously disintegrated, even though there was no planes went anywhere near it. So maybe, you know, this explains why Obama's putting someone into such a high position who's basically just a campaign manager. On a more up-to-date note, according to company records, the genetically modified mosquitoes that were tested in Brazil in 2014 at Oxford University's ISIS Innovations, yeah, that's what they're called, ISIS Innovations, has Evercore as one of its private equity investors. Lagardère has now got the former US ambassador to France's wife on its supervisory board, Susan M. Tolson. Her husband is Charles Rifkin, the former US ambassador to France. He is the Assistant Secretary of Economics and Business Affairs to the Obama administration. The current US ambassador to France, who is Jane Hartley, had a party, a joint party at her home for the company LA, which is owned by Lagardère, for a birthday party with the US company magazine called LA. So I'm just going to recap on all of that, okay? So we've got Lagardère, you've got access to the sports ground via Sport 5, who's their subsidiary. They've got the events covered on the TV at the football stadium with their company TFI. They also had 2 film crews stationed at Langdon and Chardonnay in the area who just happened to be there and actually got a lift from the firefighters to the scene. They own the Bataclan, which they bought from another Israeli Defence Force funder, the Lux Brothers, with plans for refurbishment in 2016. They've got links to the band via the bands in town. They've got links to the small businesses in St. Denis via their main sponsor, Qatar, who also happens to be the first funder of ISIS. They've got links to government officials. They've got links to the Rothschilds, who want to exploit the resources of Syria for Israel and the West. And more importantly, their media company covered all aspects of the French attacks. So what I'd like to do next now is to show you some of the people who were involved, and show you their links to the same company. So I'll start with this man. His name is Daniel Seny, spelt P-S-E-N-N-Y. He is the man responsible for filming the Bataclan, the outside of the Bataclan. He's a TV and media industry member. He is part of the Festival de Luchon Film Festival exclusively for TV fiction. He works for Le Monde, which is Lagardère owned. And his story was that he filmed the outside of the Bataclan. Then he went downstairs, rescued this man, whose name is Matthew, who had been shot and was in danger of losing his life through the loss of blood. He then rescued this man, and he then sustained a injury to his arm from a Kalashnikov shot as well. Now this is the 2 men 4 days later. I've looked up medically the implications of blood loss through being shot, and apparently it takes between 3 to 4 weeks to regain any sort of normality. That's how long it takes to get over such a thing. You would certainly not be standing up 4 days later with what appears to be a plaster on your leg. Okay, this guy on the left, Matthew, also supposedly survived 9/11. He just happened to be there when a plane hit the towers. So then we've got the story about this Daniel Seny, supposedly, who has gone outside, and how he supposedly was shot by a Kalashnikov in the arm outside the Bataclan when it all was, everything that was happening was inside. Goodness only knows. The story doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The fact that he's actually in the TV and film industry under fiction TV, and he works for Lagardère, says to me that this whole story and these 2, neither of them have been shot by anything apart from a camera. Then we've got Michael O'Connor and his girlfriend Sarah, who supposedly survived the attack. He works for TFI International and Entertainment One, which was Lagardère owned. Antoine Lyris, or Lyris, he's an actor. He reported to have lost his wife at the Bataclan. He works for Europe One, which is owned by Lagardère. This is Julia Molkow, who reported the attacks on the night. She works for Radio France, Lagardère owned. And we've got Gregory Reibenberg, supposedly the owner of the La Belle Equipe, said to have lost a member of his family. He's the owner of an insurance company called Groupama, which sold the assets in Paris to the Qatar in 2012, linked via his insurance company to Lagardère, and they were bailed out by the French government and renamed Presence. So let's not forget that this insurance company was actually involved in selling the area of St. Denis, including small businesses, to Qatar, who are also the biggest shareholder of Lagardère, and that this man is claiming that he actually owns the Belle Equipe. Then we've got this woman called Sophie Duran, supposedly survived the Bataclan. Sophie Duran works for Luxury Hospitality Events, whose boss is the managing director for Rothschild's non-banking. Jean-Marie Di Peretti, who's a veteran board member of the Reporters Sans Frontières organisation, which is also linked to Lagardère. At this point, it should be noted that Lagardère bought 40% share in Universal in 2004. It was then called Vivendi, because there's a lot of people who are linked to Universal with this event. Like Ginny Watson here, who's an actress, works for Universal and is linked to Lagardère. This next person was supposedly named Laura Croix, spelt C-R-O-I-X, who came out of a coma on the 10th of December after suffering 3 shots to the chest from a Kalashnikov and 3 shots to the abdomen. The lady standing with the gentleman in the picture is an actress whose name also happens to be Croix, but her name is Lacroix, and her first name is Nadej. This picture of her with her partner or her friend was taken on the 11th of December, which would have been the day after this other person, Laura Croix, would have woken up out of her coma. She's a Swiss actress, and according to, obviously Lagardère owned, because she works for TFI, and according to her Facebook account, she left Switzerland to go to Paris on November the 5th and returned to Geneva on November the 18th. I think they are one and the same person. Then we've got Nick Alexander, who's reported to have been killed at the Bataclan, who appears to be everybody's merchandiser, but he's basically works for Universal. And what I found interesting was that, the pathologist for Nick was Nick Hunt, the same Home Office pathologist who is involved in the cover-up of the murder of David Kelly. And he was reported to have been with his ex-girlfriend, who was said to have been shot in the legs twice. She also works for Universal and is the main caterer for U2 and Justin Bieber, both artists which have had publicity during these events. There's also a Marian Rosniewski, that's the name, who's reported to be the rock photographer, who's credited with some of the photographs. She's reported to have been the first person who was shot, and yet she commented on her Facebook that she was okay at 22:40 French time, which meant that she was posting Facebook comments while the supposed gunmen were still shooting. And then we've got the absolutely ridiculous story that Patricia San Martin and her daughter both died. The story is that they took their 5-year-old son and grandson to the event, and he managed to escape, but they were killed. At this point, you've got to ask yourself, you know, who is going to take a 5-year-old child to a heavy event gig where people are drinking? The child wouldn't even be allowed into such a venue, okay? And the fact that this woman is the niece of the Chile ambassador to Mexico makes it even more implausible. So what we're doing is we're getting, you know, an obvious picture of what's going on. People in politics, they're either people who work for Legendary themselves or offshoots of subsidiaries of the companies that he owns. Now, this also applies to those people who've been reported to have died as well at the Bataclan. We've got Gregory Foss, who's a journalist, supposed to have died. He worked at Canal D17, which Lagardère owns. Jermaine Ferry, the film artist and photographer, Lagardère owned. Cedric Gomez, journalist at Le Monde, Lagardère owned. Matthew Hotch, journalist at TV France 24, Lagardère owned. Fanny Minute, journalist at TV Canal, Lagardère owned. And Maxime Bouffard, TV Technical Films, Lagardère owned. At this point, I'm just trying to make a point that it's no coincidence that all the main people who are the ones who are giving the stories to the media, to the Lagardère media, are actually all people on the payroll. This is a picture of the day after the attacks. General Boutinard, head of Paris Fire Brigade, ex-NATO officer, probably congratulating themselves on a job well done. Alright, well, thanks for listening. I hope you can catch some of my other videos. I've actually made another video about this, about the secret societies and the links to the area, and more esoterical links to what the actual event also was showcasing, if you care to look at that. So thanks for listening. This is Annie Logical. Big shout out to Ed and Zed, and I'll catch you all soon. Thank you, bye.